In the autumn of 2025, I moved to Hollow Pines, a small town tucked deep in the mountains, where the fog clung to the ground like a living thing, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets. I'd been chasing a fresh start after a messy divorce, and the quaint, isolated town seemed perfect. A place to rebuild, to disappear. The rent was dirt cheap for a cozy cabin on the edge of the forest, and the locals, though reserved, were polite enough. But on my first night, I found a handwritten note slipped under the door, its edges yellowed and curling, as if it had been waiting for me. The rules of Hollow Pines welcome newcomer. To survive in Hollow Pines, you must follow these rules. Do not question them. Do not ignore them. They are your only protection. Never leave your doors or windows unlocked after dusk. If you hear a knock between midnight and 3 a.m., do not answer. Keep a light burning in your home at all times. Do not follow the singing from the forest. If you see a shadow move without a source, look away and coo-chee. The rest of the note was smudged. The ink bled into illegibility, as if someone had spilled water on it. I laughed it off as a prank, some small-town hazing for the new guy. But the rules stuck in my mind, their specificity unnerving. I crumpled the note and tossed it into the fireplace, where it curled into ash. Still, I checked the locks twice before bed. The first few days were uneventful. I unpacked, explored the town, and tried to settle in. Hollow Pines was quiet, too quiet. The locals avoided eye contact, their conversations halting when I approached. The general store clerk, a wiry man named Amos, handed me my change with a muttered, "Keep a light on, son." I nodded, assuming it was just folksy advice about the frequent power outages. On the fourth night, I woke to a sound, a faint, rhythmic tapping at the front door. The clock read 2:17 a.m. My heart thudded, the second rule flashing in my mind: do not answer. The knocking was soft, almost polite, but it didn't stop. Tap, tap, tap. I lay frozen, clutching the sheets, telling myself it was just a branch in the wind. But the air was still, the night silent except for that relentless sound. After 10 agonizing minutes, it stopped. I didn't sleep again that night, and in the morning I found no trace of anyone outside, no footprints, no marks, nothing. The next evening I left the porch light on. I told myself it was practical, not because of the note. But when I woke to find the bulb shattered, glass scattered across the porch, I bought a pack of candles at the store. Amos didn't meet my eyes as he rang me up. "You're learning," he said, voice low. I didn't ask what he meant. The rules became harder to dismiss. One night I forgot to lock the back door. I woke to find it wide open, the frame unmarked as if it had never been secured. Nothing was missing, but the air inside felt wrong. Too cold, too heavy. I started triple-checking locks, keeping every light in the house on, even during the day. The electric bill was going to be brutal, but the alternative felt worse. Then came the singing. It started on a moonless night, a melody drifting from the forest, high, sweet, and achingly sad, like a lullaby from a forgotten world. It pulled at me, urging me to step outside, to find its source. The fourth rule screamed in my head: do not follow. I slammed the window shut, stuffed earplugs in, but the song lingered, vibrating in my bones. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning I asked Amos about the singing. His face paled, and he busied himself with inventory. "Stay inside," he said, not looking up. "You don't want to meet her." When I pressed for details, he shook his head and walked away. The other locals were no better, tight-lipped, eyes darting to the forest's edge. One old woman, her hands trembling as she clutched her shawl, whispered, "Follow the rules, or she'll take you." I started noticing the shadows. At first I thought it was my imagination, shapes flickering at the corner of my vision, gone when I turned to look. But one evening, as I sat by the fire, a shadow slid across the wall, long and thin, with no one to cast it. My stomach twisted as I remembered the fifth rule: look away. I fixed my eyes on the floor, heart pounding, until the room felt normal again. When I glanced up, the shadow was gone. I tried to leave Hollow Pines a week later. I packed my car, drove down the only road out of town, but the fog grew thicker with every mile. The road looped back, impossibly, to the town's welcome sign. I tried again the next day, then the next, each attempt ending the same way. Panic set in, but the locals only nodded, unsurprised. "You're hers now," Amos said, his voice heavy with pity. Desperate, I searched the town's tiny library for answers. Buried in a dusty archive, I found a journal from 1893, written by a settler named Eliza Marrow. She described a woman in the forest, pale, with eyes like voids and a voice that could pull your soul from your bones. Eliza wrote of rules passed down by the first settlers, rules to keep the woman at bay. The last entry was frantic, ink smeared. I heard her sing. I looked at her shadow. She's coming. The journal ended there. The librarian, a gaunt woman with haunted eyes, snatched it from my hands. "Don't read that," she snapped. "It draws her attention." I couldn't ignore the rules anymore. I bought more candles, kept every light blazing, and nailed the windows shut. But the knocks grew louder, more insistent, sometimes joined by scratches at the walls. The singing came every night now, louder, closer, weaving through my dreams. I saw the shadow more often, its edges sharper, almost human-shaped, lingering just beyond my gaze. One night, I found a new note under the door, written in the same spidery hand. "You broke the rules. She sees you now. Hide." I didn't sleep. I boarded up the doors, lit every candle I had, and sat in the center of the living room, clutching a kitchen knife. The singing started at midnight, louder than ever, and the knocks shook the walls. I kept my eyes down, muttering the rules like a prayer. But the air grew colder, the candles flickering despite no breeze. The shadow moved, slow, deliberate, stretching across the floor toward me. I don't know how I survived that night. The morning came, gray and heavy, and the house was quiet. But the rules had changed. A new note waited on the porch. You looked. You listened. She knows your name. Run. I tried to run. The road looped again. My phone, useless in the town's dead zone, now buzzed with static, her voice humming through it, singing my name. I burned the note, but the words seared into my mind. The locals stopped talking to me. Amos locked his store when I approached. The old woman left a candle on my porch with a scrawled warning. "She's patient. You're hers." I started seeing her in glimpses, a pale figure at the forest's edge, her eyes black pits, her mouth open in song. The shadows followed me everywhere, even in daylight, sliding over walls, under doors, always just out of sight. I'm writing this now, locked in my cabin, every light on, candles burning low. The knocks are back, slow and deliberate. The singing is closer, her voice wrapping around me, pulling me toward the door. I don't know how much longer I can follow the rules. I don't know if they even matter anymore. She's here, and she knows my name. I stopped writing last night when the power flickered. The candles went out, one by one, like something was blowing them out. I relit them, hands shaking, and checked the locks again. The singing hasn't stopped. It's not just in the forest now, it's in the walls, in the floor, in my head. I found another note this morning, slipped under the door despite the boards I nailed over it. "You can't hide forever." She waits. I don't know what she is. The journal called her a spirit, a demon, a thing older than the town itself. The locals won't say her name, but I've heard them whisper, "the Hollow," when they think I'm not listening. I've started seeing her in the daytime, just flashes, pale skin, black eyes, a smile that's too wide. The shadows are bolder, stretching across my ceiling at night, forming shapes like hands reaching out. I tried to burn the notes, but they keep appearing. The latest one was on my pillow when I woke up. "You broke the rules." She's inside. I don't know how she got in. The doors are locked, the windows boarded, but the air is wrong again, heavy and cold, like the house is holding its breath. The lights flicker, even though I've replaced every bulb. The singing is constant now, a lullaby that makes my thoughts sluggish, like I'm drowning in it. I'm out of candles. The store is closed, Amos's sign reading, "Gone away." The town feels emptier, like everyone else knows something I don't. I saw the old woman watching me from her porch, her eyes wet with tears. She shook her head and went inside. I don't think I can leave Hollow Pines. The road won't let me. The fog is thicker now, curling into shapes that look like her. The shadows are everywhere. Under my bed, in the corners, behind my reflection in the mirror. I keep the lights on, but they're dimming, like something's draining them. Last night I broke the fifth rule. I looked at the shadow. It wasn't just a shape anymore. It was her, standing in the corner of my room. Her eyes locked on mine, her mouth opened, and the singing filled the house so loud it rattled my bones. I looked away, but it was too late. She knows I saw her. I'm writing this as a warning. If you find this, if you come to Hollow Pines, follow the rules. Lock your doors. Keep your lights on. Don't listen to the singing. Don't look at the shadows. And if you find a note, burn it before you read it. She's here now. The lights are out. The singing is louder. I hear her footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer. The door is locked, but it's creaking open. I can't look away anymore. She's singing my name. When I inherited Blackwood Manor in the winter of 2025, it felt like a lifeline. My tech startup had tanked, my savings were gone, and the sprawling, dilapidated estate in the middle of nowhere was my last shot at a fresh start. The manor sat on a lonely hill, surrounded by skeletal trees and a perpetual mist that seemed to swallow sound. The lawyer who handed me the keys warned me to follow the instructions left by my great-aunt, the previous owner. I thought he was joking, until I found the list. Tucked inside a drawer in the manor's cavernous study, written on brittle parchment in a trembling hand, was a set of rules titled The Tenant's Code. The paper smelled of mildew and something sharper like iron. It read, "To reside in Blackwood Manor, you must obey these rules. They are absolute. Break them, and you belong to the house. Never sleep in the east wing. Do not speak aloud after 10 p.m. If you hear footsteps in the attic, light a candle immediately. Avoid mirrors between midnight and dawn. If a door opens on its own, close it and lock it twice. Do not touch the paintings in the gallery. If you see a figure in the fog outside, do not acknowledge it." The list went on, but the ink blurred into illegibility past the seventh rule, as if someone had tried to erase it. I scoffed, assuming it was my great-aunt's eccentricity or a prank to scare off squatters. Still, the manor's oppressive silence made my skin crawl, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were watching me. The first night, I ignored the rules. I was exhausted from the drive and collapsed in the first bedroom I found, in the east wing. I woke at 3 a.m. to a sound like bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor, circling my bed. The air was freezing, my breath visible in the dark. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, but the battery was dead, despite being fully charged hours earlier. The footsteps stopped, and I heard a low, guttural hum, like someone trying to speak through a throat full of gravel. I bolted upright, heart hammering, and ran to the light switch. The bulb flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to writhe. I didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, I moved my things to a room in the west wing. The manor was a maze of creaking floorboards, dusty chandeliers, and portraits with eyes that seemed to follow me. I found the gallery mentioned in the rules, a long hall lined with paintings of stern-faced men and women, their expressions cold and accusing. One canvas, larger than the rest, depicted a woman in a black dress, her face obscured by shadow. My fingers brushed the frame as I passed, and the air turned heavy, like a storm was brewing inside the house. I yanked my hand back, remembering the sixth rule, and hurried out. That evening, I decided to follow the rules, if only to calm my nerves. I locked every door, kept my voice to a whisper, and avoided the mirrors, covering them with old sheets I found in a closet. But at 10:30 p.m., I heard it. Footsteps in the attic, slow and deliberate, like someone pacing above me. The third rule flashed in my mind. I scrambled to light a candle, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the match. The footsteps stopped as the flame caught, and the house fell silent. But the candle's light revealed something new. A shadow on the wall, tall and thin, with no source to cast it. I froze, my pulse roaring in my ears, and forced myself to look away. The next day I drove to the nearest town, a sleepy hamlet called Greystone, to ask about the manor. The locals were cagey, their answers vague. The bartender at the only pub, a grizzled man named Cal, leaned close and said, "Follow the rules, kid. The house doesn't forgive." When I asked what he meant, he shook his head and turned away. A woman at the grocery store, overhearing me, slipped me a crumpled note before hurrying off. It read, "Don't let her see you." I didn't need to ask who she was. Back at the manor, the rules became my obsession. I nailed shut the east wing's doors, taped over the mirrors, and kept a lighter and candles in every room. But the house seemed to fight back. Doors I locked swung open in the night, their hinges silent. The paintings in the gallery shifted. Sometimes the woman in the black dress faced left, sometimes right, her shadowed face always hidden. Once, I caught a glimpse of her eyes in the paint, glinting like wet obsidian, and I ran from the room, my skin prickling. The fog outside grew thicker each day, curling around the manor like a living thing. One evening, as I checked the windows, I saw a figure in the mist, tall, impossibly thin, standing just beyond the garden, its head tilted as if studying me. The seventh rule screamed in my mind, "Do not acknowledge it." I tore my gaze away, my chest tight, and slammed the curtain shut. That night, the footsteps in the attic returned, louder, faster, like something was running. I lit every candle I had, the flames trembling as the air grew colder. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, got in my car, and drove down the winding road, but the fog thickened. The trees seemed to close in, and after an hour, I was back at the manor's gates. I tried again the next day, then the next, each attempt looping me back to that cursed hill. The house wouldn't let me go. Desperate, I searched the manor for answers. In the study, I found a journal hidden behind a loose panel, its pages brittle and yellowed. It belonged to my great-aunt, dated 1973. She wrote of the lady, a presence tied to the manor, bound by the rules the first tenants had set to contain her. Breaking the rules, she warned, gave the lady power. The last entry was a scrawl. I looked in the mirror. She's here. I burned the journal in the fireplace, but the smoke curled into shapes, faces, hands, eyes. That night, a new rule appeared, scratched into the wood of my bedroom door. Do not speak her name. I hadn't said it aloud, but I'd been thinking it, piecing together whispers from the town. The lady, the house, they were the same. The manor grew hostile. Mirrors I'd covered were bare again, reflecting shadows that weren't mine. Doors unlocked themselves, swinging open to reveal empty rooms, or worse, rooms that weren't there before, with walls that pulsed like flesh. The footsteps in the attic became voices, whispering my name, my failures, my fears. I stopped sleeping, too afraid to close my eyes in the east wing or anywhere else. One night, I broke the second rule. Exhausted, delirious, I shouted into the dark, begging the lady to leave me alone. The house answered. The chandeliers rattled, the paintings shook, and the woman in the black dress stepped out of her canvas. Her face was a void, her eyes endless, and her voice was the hum I'd heard that first night, now deafening. She moved toward me, her steps silent but heavy, the air warping around her. I ran, locking myself in the basement, lighting candles until my fingers blistered. She didn't follow, but I heard her pacing above, waiting. I'm writing this now, huddled in the basement, the last candle flickering. The rules are everywhere, carved into the walls, scrawled on the floor, burned into my mind. I don't know how many I've broken. The footsteps are back, closer now, not in the attic, but on the stairs. The fog outside presses against the windows and I see her in it, her void face smiling. I tried to burn the manor down yesterday. The flames wouldn't catch. The house laughed, a low, grinding sound that shook the walls. I found a new rule this morning, written in my own handwriting, though I don't remember writing it. You are hers now. I can't leave. The road loops, the fog traps me, and the lady is patient. The candles are gone, the mirrors uncovered, and the paintings watch me. I hear her voice in the walls, calling my name, promising rest if I just give in. I don't know how much longer I can fight. If you find this, if you come to Blackwood Manor, follow the rules. Lock the doors, light the candles, avoid the mirrors, don't speak after 10, and whatever you do, don't say her name. She's listening. She's waiting. The house is hers, and now so am I. When I first moved to Black Hollow, It looked like any other quaint town tucked away in the Appalachian Mountains. Peaceful, a little old-fashioned, and just strange enough to feel interesting. I came for the job. The pay was good, the cost of living was cheap, and I needed to start over. The house I rented was cozy. A little 2-bedroom cottage with ivy-covered brick walls and creaky floorboards that groaned at night. The landlord, a hunched old man named Mr. Cranley, handed me a worn envelope when I signed the lease. Inside was a single yellowed sheet of paper with 10 rules typed on it. The ink looked faded, like it had been typed with an old typewriter. The rules of Black Hollow. 1. Never leave your windows open after sundown. 2. Do not whistle after dark. 3. If someone knocks between midnight and 3:33 a.m., do not answer. 4. Keep salt above every doorway. 5. Leave one light on in every room even when sleeping. 6. On the 13th of every month, do not speak a single word between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. 7. If you see a second moon in the sky, stay indoors until sunrise. 8. Do not acknowledge children you do not recognize. 9. Should you hear your name whispered in the woods, do not follow the voice. 10. If the church bell rings more than 12 times at midnight, hide immediately. I chuckled when I read them. Mr. Cranley didn't. These aren't for fun, he said, his cloudy eyes locking onto mine. Everyone who lives here follows them. Seriously? Dead serious. I thought it was local superstition, maybe a quirky town tradition. I had lived in cities my whole life. What did I know about rural weirdness? But I nodded and took the paper anyway. I framed it as a joke and hung it in the hallway. The first week passed without incident, but the town felt off. The people were polite, but distant, as if everyone carried a secret they didn't want to share. The grocery store had no music. The library had no fiction section. And no one ever spoke above a hushed tone after sundown. One night, I forgot to close the bathroom window. It was a mistake. I had taken a late shower and left it open to let the steam out. I only realized it when I was half asleep in bed and heard something like scratching. Not the light kind either. It was deliberate. Fingernails on wood, claws maybe. I crept to the bathroom and froze. A hand, gray, long-fingered, slick as wet leather, was slowly pushing the window open. I slammed it shut and locked it. My heart punched my ribs as I yanked the salt from the kitchen and dumped it along the windowsill. Whatever it was, scratched a few more times, then stopped. The next morning I found deep gouges in the outside wood. I bought more salt. Rule number 2 came next. I was whistling, absent-mindedly, while taking out the trash. It was barely past 9 p.m. when the wind picked up. I heard something whistle back, but it was wrong. It didn't echo. It mimicked. Then I heard footsteps, not behind me, on the roof, heavy, pacing. I backed toward the door slowly, garbage bag dangling at my side. I looked up. I shouldn't have. There was something crouched on the roof. Thin, hairless. It tilted its head in sharp little jerks like a praying mantis trying to decide what part of me to eat first. It whistled again, just a single note. I slammed the door and didn't sleep that night. By the 3rd week, I wasn't laughing anymore. I followed the rules obsessively. I checked the lights, salted every doorframe. I bought blackout curtains and soundproofed my windows. I even stopped walking near the woods. The rules weren't silly anymore. They were survival. Then came the 13th of the month. I was working from home and had set an alarm for 12:55 p.m., just in case. When it rang, I shut my laptop, set my phone down, and sat in silence. At 1:04 p.m., someone knocked. I didn't move. Then I heard a voice. A woman's voice. She was sobbing. "Please," she whimpered, "help me!" I squeezed my eyes shut. "I know you're in there." The door handle jiggled, then rattled violently. The sobs turned into angry muttering. Something slammed against the door, once, twice, and then silence. I waited until 2:01 p.m. before moving. When I finally opened the door, nothing was there, except a single black feather wedged between the door and frame. The scariest part wasn't the knocking. It was how normal everything seemed in the morning. Like nothing had happened. Like the town just forgot. But the worst came last night. It started with the church bell. I was reading in bed when I heard it. Slow, deep, and louder than it had any right to be. 12 rings, then 13. Then 14. I bolted up, heart thundering. Rule number 10. Hide, immediately. I ran to the closet and threw myself in, shutting the door behind me. I didn't even turn off the bedroom light. I crouched behind a pile of boxes and held my breath. The 15th bell echoed through the town like thunder. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs. My bedroom door creaked open. I knew because the light changed. It dimmed, like something was standing in the doorway, casting a shadow across the floor. Then I heard my name, not whispered, spoken, in a voice that sounded like mine, but wrong. Eli! A creak, then another. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed. Something brushed the closet door. Then, silence. I don't know how long I stayed in there. Hours, maybe. By the time I emerged, the sun was coming up. Everything looked normal, except my front door was wide open, and muddy footprints led from it to my bedroom, and then back out. I wanted to leave that day. I packed a bag and started to drive. But when I got to the edge of town, there was a sign, road closed, and another sign underneath. You forgot a rule. I turned around. I didn't remember breaking one, not recently. But when I got back home, the paper with the 10 rules was gone. In its place was a new list, freshly typed. The Rules of Black Hollow, amended for resident Eli Marshall. 1. Never leave your windows open after sundown. 2. Do not whistle after dark. 3. If someone knocks between midnight and 3:33 a.m., do not answer. 4. Keep salt above every doorway. 5. Leave one light on in every room even when sleeping. 6. On the 13th of every month, do not speak a single word between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. 7. If you see a second moon in the sky, stay indoors until sunrise. 8. Do not acknowledge children you do not recognize. 9. Should you hear your name whispered in the woods, do not follow the voice. 10. If the church bell rings more than 12 times at midnight, hide immediately. 11. Do not attempt to leave. 12. Never stop following the rules. I don't sleep anymore. I nap in bursts, always with one eye on the lights, one hand near the salt. There are sounds in the attic now. Sometimes footsteps, sometimes whispers, and once, laughter. Every night the rules are still there, tacked to the wall, but the paper looks newer than it should, as if it keeps being replaced, as if someone wants to make sure I never forget. I don't know what happens if I break one again, and I don't want to find out, because Black Hollow doesn't forgive. It just rewrites the rules. When my sister Clara disappeared, I didn't expect to inherit her house. We hadn't spoken in years, not after the falling out about our parents' will. But when the lawyer called me, his voice shaky and solemn, I couldn't say no. She had named me executor, and the house at Hollow Creek now belonged to me. You'll find instructions there, the lawyer said cryptically. Clara was particular. He wasn't lying. The house was an old Victorian relic on a sloped hill overlooking a patch of dark woods. The paint peeled from the siding like old skin, and every window stared at me like a blind eye. I found the front door unlocked, the key hanging on a rusty nail, and waiting inside the foyer, as promised, was a letter. To whoever enters this house, these are the rules of Hollow Creek House. Read them, follow them, never break them. 1. Do not open the basement door. It doesn't matter what you hear. 2. The mirror in the second-floor hallway must remain covered. Never look into it. 3. Every night at 9:33 p.m., leave a glass of water outside your bedroom door. Don't forget to drink the one left the night before. 4. If you hear scratching inside the walls, do not respond. Do not knock back. 5. Never leave the house between 3 a.m. and 3:17 a.m., no matter what you see outside. 6. If the doorbell rings more than once in a night, hide. 7. Always sleep with the closet door cracked open, never fully shut or fully open. 8. Do not answer the phone after midnight. It's not for you. 9. If you find teeth that are not yours, bury them in the garden. Immediately. 10. If the lights flicker in the kitchen, leave the house for exactly 17 minutes. Return only when they stop. Clara had signed it at the bottom. I stared at the letter for a long time, trying to convince myself it was a joke. Her final little performance. She had always loved horror novels. The weirder the better. Maybe this was just her way of messing with me from beyond the grave. But that first night changed everything. It began at 9:33 p.m. I was watching TV when I remembered rule number 3. Just for fun, or superstition, I poured a glass of water and placed it outside my door. I drank the stale one that had been sitting there. It tasted like cold air. Then I went to bed. At 3:05 a.m., I woke to footsteps outside the house. I lived alone. The house had no neighbors for at least a mile, and Hollow Creek wasn't the kind of place people passed through. I crept to the window, careful not to step on the creaking floorboards. Outside in the moonlight stood a woman. She was facing away from the house, not moving, not looking around, just standing. At 3:16 a.m., she turned to face me. Her eyes were missing. I ducked and waited. When I looked again, she was gone. The next morning, I found a tooth in the hallway. It was too large to be mine, yellow, chipped, and human. I gagged and buried it in the garden. Just like Clara said, the ground was already soft. That day, I taped a sheet over the mirror on the second floor. I hadn't looked into it yet, but something about its antique, stained glass felt hungry. Still, I hadn't truly believed until the doorbell rang. It was my third night in the house. The doorbell rang once at 9 p.m., an old, deep chime that echoed like thunder. No one was there. I chalked it up to nerves, or maybe a power surge. But I locked the door anyway and double-checked the deadbolt. At 9:33, I put the glass of water out and drank the one left the night before. It was lukewarm. Then the doorbell rang again. Twice, I froze. Rule number 6. If the doorbell rings more than once in a night, hide. I turned off the light, crawled under the bed, and held my breath. Footsteps creaked across the floorboards downstairs. They weren't mine. Whoever it was moved slowly. One step, then another, like they were savoring the sound. I heard something drag along the walls like fingernails. Then came the whisper, not words, just breath. It lasted until 4 a.m. When I emerged, everything was in its place, except the mirror on the second floor. The sheet I'd taped over it was gone. I found it in the bathtub, shredded. By the end of the week, I was a wreck. I barely slept. I barely ate. The rules became rituals, obsessive, exact, and terrifying. Some nights the walls would pulse with scratching, like rats made of bone and metal. I never knocked back, and every morning I found teeth, more and more of them. I dug hole after hole in the garden. The ground was always soft. Then, on the 7th night, I forgot. I fell asleep before putting the water out at 9:33. When I woke, I was thirsty. My throat felt like it had been scraped with sandpaper. I stumbled to the door and opened it. The hallway was wet. The walls dripped with condensation. My glass lay shattered, and next to it was something scribbled in water on the floor. You're welcome. That night, the lights flickered in the kitchen. Rule number 10. I grabbed my coat and left the house. I drove aimlessly around the woods for 17 minutes, watching the clock with white knuckles. When I returned, everything seemed normal, except for the figure watching from the second floor window. The room with the mirror. I decided to leave. The house was killing me slowly, stealing my sleep, my sanity. I packed my bags, got into my car, and drove down the winding path toward the main road. But at the edge of the property, my tires hit something. Not a bump, a barrier. The air shimmered. My headlights flickered, and suddenly the road curved back to the house. I tried again and again. Each time I ended up at the front gate. The mailbox still read Clara Locke. I was trapped, and then I noticed the rules. They'd changed. The paper in the hallway was rewritten, still in Clara's handwriting, but the list was longer now. It now read, The Rules of Hollow Creek House, updated for David Locke. 1. Do not open the basement door. 2. Keep the second floor mirror covered with a sheet soaked in salt water. 3. Leave a glass of water at your door at 9:33 p.m. and drink the one left. 4. Do not knock back at the walls. 5. Never leave between 3 a.m. and 3:17 a.m. 6. If the doorbell rings more than once, hide in the attic. 7. Always sleep with the closet door cracked open. 8. Do not answer the phone after midnight. 9. Bury any teeth immediately, but do not look where you dig. 10. If the lights flicker in the kitchen, leave the house for 17 minutes. Do not return if you see your reflection outside. 11. Feed the mirror on the last night of the month. 12. When the scratching stops, open the basement door. 13. Do not read the final rule until the others have been broken. I stared at the 13th rule. The bottom of the page was torn. I haven't looked for the missing piece. Not yet, but tonight is the last night of the month, and the mirror is hungry. The letter arrived on a Thursday, slipped under the door of my apartment with no return address. The paper was thick, yellowed at the edges, as if it had been waiting decades to be delivered. Dear new tenant, welcome to 17 Black Hollow Lane. To ensure a peaceful stay, please adhere to the following rules. Failure to do so may result in unpleasant consequences. I scoffed. Unpleasant consequences? It had to be a joke. The building was old, sure, but it wasn't some haunted Victorian mansion. Just a run-down apartment complex with flickering lights and a landlord who never answered his phone. Still, I read on. Rule number 1, never enter apartment 4B. The door is painted red for a reason. If you hear knocking from inside, do not answer, no matter how much it sounds like someone you know. I rolled my eyes. The whole building only had 4 units. Mine was 2A. I'd never even seen a 4B. A mere rule, too. The hallway light will flicker at exactly 3:33 a.m. every night. Do not leave your apartment during this time. If you must, keep your eyes on the floor. Do not look at the mirrors. Now that was oddly specific. I glanced at the cheap, full-length mirror leaning against my wall. It had come with the place, its surface slightly warped. Mom, rule number 3, if you hear a child singing in the walls, cover your ears and count backward from 100. Do not stop until the singing stops. If you hear the child ask you a question, do not respond under any circumstances. A shiver ran down my spine. The walls were thin. I could hear my neighbor's TV through them. But a child singing? That was new. Rule number 4. The landlord does not make house calls after dark. If someone claiming to be the landlord knocks on your door past sunset, do not open it, no matter what they say. That one actually made sense. The guy was a recluse. I'd only met him once, and he'd barely spoken 2 words. I tossed the letter onto the counter, deciding it was just some stupid prank. But that night, as I lay in bed, I heard it, a soft off-key humming. A child's voice. It was coming from inside the wall. My blood turned to ice. I sat up, straining to listen. The voice was faint, singing a nursery rhyme I didn't recognize. Little shadow, little shade, won't you come out and play? I remembered rule number 3. I clamped my hands over my ears and started counting backward. 100, 99, 98. The singing grew louder. I see you in there all alone. No, a giggle, then silence. I waited, heart pounding. Nothing. I let out a shaky breath. Coincidence. Had to be. But at 3:33 a.m., the hallway light outside my door began to flicker. I sat frozen in bed, staring at the sliver of light under my door. It pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Then, knock, knock, knock. From the hallway, I held my breath. Knock, knock, knock. Then a voice, deep, gravelly. Maintenance. Heard you had a leak. My throat went dry. The landlord didn't make house calls after dark. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After a long moment, heavy footsteps shuffled away. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I searched the building for apartment 4B. There was no 4th floor, just 3 levels with my unit on the 2nd. But as I passed the 3rd floor landing, I saw it. A door. Red. Peeling paint, rusted hinges. A heavy padlock hung from the handle, though it looked broken, as if someone had tried and failed to force it open. I reached for it. Don't. I spun around. Mrs. Lowell from 3A stood behind me, her wrinkled face pale. That door doesn't exist, she whispered. What do you mean? She grabbed my arm, nails digging in. The last tenant who opened it, they found her in the walls. My stomach twisted. What? But she was already hurrying back to her apartment, locking the door behind her. That night, the child sang again. Little shadow, little shade, why won't you come out? I covered my ears, counted. This time the voice giggled. You looked at the door today. My blood ran cold. Do you want to see what's inside? I squeezed my eyes shut. No. Then silence. I waited. Nothing. Until the knocking started. Not at my door. Inside my apartment. From the mirror. I turned slowly. The glass had fogged over, though the room was cold. And written in the condensation, in a child's messy scrawl. Let me out. I ran. Out the door, down the stairs, right into the flickering hallway. The lights pulsed. Shadows stretched too long. And in the mirror at the end of the hall, a small figure stood, face pressed against the glass, watching me. I sprinted for the exit, but the front door was locked. Then, a creak. The red door. It was open, and from the darkness inside, something whispered, "You broke the rules." They found my body in the walls, just like the last tenant. And if you move into 17 Black Hollow Lane, you'll get the same letter. Follow the rules, or you'll end up like me. Thank you for listening. Hope I didn't scare you too much. If you like my stories, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. See you next time.